Good afternoon. Pastor Dan coming to you with a Good Friday lunchtime devotional today. And I've been digging around a lot in the last few chapters of each of the Gospels, just looking at the events of Easter again, trying to do that with some fresh lenses. And we've even been reading through some of those in the morning as a family to talk about them. And I was struck by something that I think just in light of current events just struck me differently. And the thing I was struck by is how life got turned upside down for the disciples. You know, on Good Friday, what we call Good Friday, it's good because Jesus died for our sin, but it was a horrible Friday for the disciples and for Jesus. I mean, you have the disciples who had been following him around for 3 years, learning from him, being stretched, growing, doing miracles. I mean, incredible things were happening that they were a part of. And they're thinking, they got to be thinking, this is amazing. I mean, they just had the triumphal entry. Jesus rides into town on the donkey. Everybody's praising and excited and happy. Like, everything is looking really good. Really good. And then things go bad. So Good Friday kind of crashed to a grinding halt. They had a situation where the disciples are following Jesus and Jesus is now dead. And that's got to be nearly impossible to wrap your head around, that Jesus is suddenly dead. And not only is he dead, but everyone had scattered. I mean, you have Peter, who denied Jesus multiple times. In the Gospel of Mark seems to be describing himself when he describes somebody who fled from the garden naked, like he had been wearing a blanket, and he takes off running and is trying to hide. So you have just a horrible scenario where the disciples are now basically, life has been turned upside down, it's crashed, and they're now sheltering in place in groups of less than 10. You know, it's kind of familiar in a way. And the other thing that's interesting is they've got to be incredibly fearful of what their future now holds. You know, they thought their future was going to look one way, and now their future looks entirely different. You know, are they going to be hunted down? Are they going to be put to death like Jesus because they're his followers? Is anything good going to happen in their lives going forward out of this? I mean, why do you think Peter denied knowing Jesus? He was afraid he was going to lose his life. It's tough. It's a tough situation, full of a lot of anxiety, a lot of unknown, a lot of fear. And I think it's interesting that all lines up with this week in our world. That this week in our world, you know, we're looking around and going, our life was building towards something. We had things scheduled and events planned, maybe vacations, and things were maybe looking like they were going a certain way, and then everything has crashed, and now we're essentially hiding, probably not necessarily in fear, but maybe a little bit in fear, and we're certainly fearful of what the future is going to hold. What's it going to look like? Where are things going to stand when everything, quote unquote, goes back to normal? Will we come out of this thing okay? I think those kind of questions linger in our minds. And I'll tell you, for Pastor Nick and I, as we've been working through all this stuff and looking again, I mean, we were building towards church planting. And it feels like that all got turned totally upside down. And then, you know, we're stuck. We can't even have services like normal. And it is hard not to be somewhat fearful of the future and all of the unknowns and what steps do you take. And so we've been able to relate to that in a ministry sense as well. But here's the thing. It was a time of great fear for the disciples, but it was far from a bad thing. It ended up being the very best thing that could have ever happened in their lives. Jesus died, but Jesus rose again. And Jesus did ascend, but he gave them his Holy Spirit. And this was the birth of the church that has transformed the world ever since. So hang in there and keep looking for Jesus in the midst of whatever you're going through and wherever you're at. And know that, you know, it may be Friday, but as they say, Sunday's coming. And pray that you're already seeing God at work, and even in the kind of hiding out right now, and even in the uncertainty of the future, we do know that He is in that future, and He is the one who works all things together for our good. So hang in there and keep looking for Him. Pray that you get some time to connect with some of those last chapters of each of the Gospels. And I've particularly found John to be fascinating. I think that's where I'm headed with the Easter Sunday message, is the Gospel of John, and excited to share that with you. So God bless, happy Easter, and may you have a reflective and growing Good Friday.